You know what, everybody? I'm a young American. I'm young. I think it's okay for us young people and that we should know, it'd be mandatory to know about the country. But I was really just wondering, since all of our banks are recently going out of business, I mean, doesn't that worry about you? Don't you think it, possibly hurt the economy? You know, as you know that, we Americans, we put, banks is where we put our money. You mean you work hard, I work hard for a job, for the college rent, for that retirement. Where do we put our money? That's what banks are for. We put them in the bank. As for some of y'all people, who don't get out much, banks, you may think you put them in safes, but you don't do that. The banks loan your money out to other people. People buy say a regular person, he makes about $18,000 a year. That's not a lot at all. That's hardly nothing. And he tries to go out and buy a house at $65,000. The banks are giving ridiculous loans out to people that are never going to be able to pay for it. And for you coming back, say you had like your whole savings and you have $45,000 and then you've been working for 10 years, they're gonna give you a profit back of $20,000. That's almost $30,000 loss, 30 something thousand dollar loss. That's not cool. That's where your money's going, to people that can't pay off loans. Now, I mean, I don't. I mean, yes. I mean, really, it's not the people's fault. It's kind of the banks, because if you really do the math and how many times, how many years they have to work just to get that house, I think the bank should be more appropriate on what they should do as far as giving out loans. Obviously, the houses, maybe like $13,000. They make 18,000. I mean, my bad. Be like 40,000 or something like that. And they make 18,000. Within 10 years, they can pay off that off. Or maybe 5 years they can pay it off, or maybe 2 years I have half of the whole down payment completely done. That's what the bank does, instead of giving out these ridiculous loans. And then you get your money cut. I'm not gonna mention any banks' names. I'm not gonna do that, but I'm just gonna I'm not giving any banks' names out, like I said. You know, basically, first, you know, the government paid $8.2 million to assist in 98 banks in one area, to receive primarily approximately for the Treasury Department for, I'm not giving $193 million investment. Where do you think your money's going, America? Where? It's going down the damn drain because the banks don't know how to cooperate their money. They don't know how to use it right. Man, you banks are America, believe it or not, because Americans rely on banks. 78% of Americans rely on banks. That's where we put our savings. That's where we put our kids' college funds. That's where we put everything. So, maybe the bank, should get the head out of the ass, and maybe, if it weren't for our government, thank our government, because, if we didn't have a good government and we were down and we weren't doing too good, and our economy is not the greatest right now. We're kind of slumping low. I mean, damn, economy's going low. We're far from a depression. Trust me, we're far from depression. I say that. But the way we're going right now, the banks aren't helping. Gas prices are actually going down. Some places, I think it was Ohio State. It was like $1.40 something. Up here in New York, it's about it went down to two something. I think it's 2.85. It's not the point, but it's not helping our economy. I'm cool with that. With a new Obama, what's his game plan to see what's his game plan to deal with the banks. He shouldn't have to deal with the banks. I think I think it's about 7 or 8 major banks that have been bailed out by the government. For example, Chrysler, Ford, they've been bailed out before, and that's at the point, congressmen are like, show us, a plan basically, and we'll show you the money. That's how it goes. So I really don't care if Ford and them go out. You know why? Because there's always gonna be someone making something better. There's always gonna be another new name. Someone's gonna come up with a new car. I think the way we should go. See, the reason why I believe Ford, Chrysler, and all these other places, for example, the trucks, the economy's slumping down really bad. And I don't get off subject, but I'll make my point here. For example, the economy's going bad. People are barely making money, minimum wage, and what do Ford and Chrysler, Ford and Dodge do? I mean, not Dodge, Ford and Chevy do? They go out and buy make 4-ton, 4-door diesel engine trucks that no one can afford. I mean, you know, not everybody can afford this, and this is one of the reasons why. Instead of making a better alternative, a vehicle, not a big humongous one that just sucks gas up. I think that's the reason why they went out of business. I think that's their fault, and I really don't care if government and Congress bail them out. They don't need to be bailed out. Be someone better than them. You got yourself in a predicament, and you can get yourself out. So maybe if by a miracle somehow you got this money from someone, maybe y'all should start thinking of alternative fuels, a better way that American people can go out and buy a car. They can't afford a big Ford or diesel that I'm not saying that nobody needs one. There are people, farmers need them, businesses need them. But I'm saying for an average person, they need to cut things up. Stop making 30,000 of them. I mean, like 2 million of them a year. For America. Maybe cut it down to like you know, $100. You just gotta, man, you gotta use your brain. I'm not good with math. It doesn't take a genius. I go to school, man, and I'm getting out here and I'm saying this to y'all, and this comes from the top of my head, and I'm sitting back here and I'm thinking, damn, I'm 17 years old. I'm gonna be 18 soon. I want my economy by the time I'm 18 or 19 to be good. I want to be living in a good, stable place. I will Obama, come in the White House in January. I hope his plan for such far as the banks. We need America. We need to get it together. We're kind of falling apart in a way. It's not good. We need to get it together. What can we do, Mr. Obama, to do this? What kind of plans can you pull out of your ass to do this? Well, I hope you got some good things. And my advice about the bank thing, you know, I think, they need to stop giving out loans that, they obviously know people are not going to pay back. Cut back your loans. You can give money out. Make sure you get the money back. What's happening is that they're giving the money out again. And what did the bank do? They take their cars, they take their furniture, they take these people's things because they do it. That's not the bank's still not making money because you buy a brand new Lexus or something for $45,000. You drive it off the plaza or whatever. It's gonna drop down a good 10%. So the bank's still not getting a good profit. That's not helping the bank at all. I said you just need to control your money, control what you do with your money. As far as GMC, y'all can shove it because y'all had it's like the third time we bailed you out. Back in the 80s, y'all had problems, and now you're doing the same thing again. So I think that y'all just need to I think you guys are dumb. I think y'all are history. Someone else will make something better. It'll be like Tascas trucks or something. You know. But I think y'all put yourself in a predicament you can't get yourself out of. I think y'all should think America's economy will get better. Gas prices will drop. That's cool. That's a good thing. But Obama, let's see what he would do in a tribute to America as far as economy crisis. The bank crisis. You know the GM company. The Ford vehicle. Ford's Chevy's crisis. See if he could maybe possibly do any help and give them one more chance. But it's my expertise, speaking to y'all, give my point of view of what I believe and what, give me your comments, what you believe, and if I'm wrong, correct me on it. Please correct me. All due respect, please correct me, I don't want to be sitting here blabbing my mouth talking stuff that's not true. So come on, leave me your comments. My name is Christian Tasker. Hit me up on MySpace. Thank you very much for letting me have your time.